This is the Agorist Nexus podcast. I'm Brandon. I've got my great co-host Dag with me. How you doing, Dag?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Excited for this year guest. How you doing?
Hey, great. We've got a super special guest. We're always honored to have Saul Mayweather on. He's, definitely internet famous. If you know, probably one of the most famous Agorists out there. And we're really honored to have him write for us too. So that's been great. How you doing, Saul?
Good. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be on. Like I said before we went live, we started recording. This is such a great podcast to be part of because Agorist Nexus has been growing so much. So I really appreciate you guys including me on anything you do, whether it's the podcast or the blog. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, feelings mutual. So I want to talk about some of the Agorist topics that don't get talked about, but I feel in terms of agorism, that agorists are kind of divided on this topic. And I'm pretty sure you and me have, if not the same, really similar views from what I've seen anyways.
Right.
And I want to start out with boogaloos, because that seems like the number one topic that kind of agorists are split down the line with. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not really sure it is controversial amongst agorists because I don't think... that's not agorism, but boogaloo is not agorism. So anybody who's out there trying to promote a so-called boogaloo is not really an agorist. That's not counter economics. If a violent insurrection, the reason why I prefer counter economics is because violent insurrections have failed every single time in all of human history, right? So the French went through it with Robespierre, the English went through it with Cromwell. We went through it with Washington. Whenever you chop the head off of one tyrant, the guy holding the sword becomes the next tyrant. And that's basically the problem with violent solutions to the state. So the only effective solution is counter economics. And that's because it's the only logically consistent strategy, right? We're the only strategy to oppose statism that doesn't include the initiation of violence upon peaceful people is agorism, is counter economics, and that's that logical consistency. That's where that's the well from which we draw the strength of the philosophy from.
You're right. I mean, when they chop a head off, a tyrant, it's almost like a hydra. You've got, five more or whatever, and it's like what they say. What was said in that one movie, The Patriot, where he says, why would I trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 300 1 mile away? And that's kind of what we have now. We've got a crap ton of tyrants, whether it's state, local, city, or, federal, whatever.
Even like the local bureaucrats on like the zoning board have become tyrannical. But, it's funny because a lot of times when you do have one of these violent insurrections, what will happen is the person or the tyrant that replaces the old tyrant ends up being more oppressive than the previous tyrant, right? In the case of Cromwell, the English people ended up begging the deposed king's family to come back and rule over them because Cromwell was so tyrannical, and he was supposed to be like this big revolutionary, So, or again, ask the farmers of Pennsylvania how they feel about not the American Revolution being fought over taxes, and then having Washington invade them unconstitutionally to steal their money from sales of whiskey. So. Again, violence just replaces governments, whereas counter economics eradicates them, and that's the difference.
Yeah, you bring up so many good points there, and a lot of people say, and I want to say that in New Libertarian Manifesto, Konkin writes that even if he's not consistent, agorism is a consistent principle. So. And the whole point of agorism is to basically take down the state via counter economics, right? So if you're not trying to take down the state counter economically and you're trying to do it militarily, that's not consistent with agorism.
No. I was just agreeing with you. You're 100% right. That's not to say, and I agree with Konkin here that eventually there will be this sort of violent confrontation between agorists and the state, but that'll be much later on. That'll be like during phase 4 of the Agorist revolution. That'll be between PDAs or private defense agencies and the remaining pockets of politicians. So there will be that sort of violent showdown, but that won't be the sort of general uprising that people like envision it to be. Like people think like all of a sudden we're all going to like pick up our muskets and go fight the government in the fields. It's not going to happen. That, those days have passed. So again, the only logically consistent strategy is counter economics. And, the funny thing is Konkin was a scientist. Right. So like he had this real appreciation for logical consistency and like scientific accuracy. And I don't think people, even a lot of agorists, don't understand that about agorism, is that it's very much so a scientific theory. Like it's very it's a very logically sound theory. So, it's almost like quantum mechanics is you can't find like a logical loophole in quantum mechanics. It's the same way with agorism. But that's what makes us stand out from the other schools of thought in the libertarian community. Like all of the other, like all the minarchists, the constitutionalists, the Libertarian Party guys, they're obviously logically inconsistent for a host of reasons. The NCAPs are logically inconsistent because, they all prefer, they don't know what strategy they prefer, to be honest with you, but they usually end up voting or they engage in anarcho-Zionism or they promote secession or all these pipe dreams, you know what I mean? They don't see the final piece of the puzzle, which is the counter-economic, the logical consistency of counter-economics.
What kind of scientist was Konkin?
I think he was like a chemist.
Wasn't it? It was chemistry. Okay.
I believe he was a chemist.
There was, I'm sorry, I'm going to get a little weird here for a second. There was, when you were talking just now, about agorism being like a scientifically like logical thing. Like, I don't know, maybe you can help me. I have a hard time putting my feelings into words in this, but there's something about like markets that just feels to me like that's just how the universe functions, right? Like there's balance when just like in nature, when there's a hole somewhere, something comes in to fill that niche, and that's kind of the same way markets operate.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like there's just something like almost like, God or the universe or whatever. That's just like, that just makes like the universe just function the best like that, when things are.
I totally
you get what I'm saying? I don't want to sound like I'm rambling, but
no, 100%. And at the risk of becoming too philosophical for you guys or for the audience, for the listeners, and this is something I touched on briefly in one of my podcast episodes, but essentially, if you think about it, right, like if you ask yourself what sort of characteristics or traits would an entity have to have in order for us to consider that entity to be God, well, they would have to have they'd have to have the ability to instantly communicate with anybody anywhere in the world. Like we all picture God can just start talking to anybody at any moment in time, right? God can be anywhere at any time. He knows everything. He's omniscient. He's omnipresent. So we have all of these characteristics of God. And if you think about it, really all that means is that God has really impeccable access to the truth, right? If what makes God is just really great access to knowledge, then that sort of puts knowledge in a superior position to God. And you can't have that. That's a logical contradiction. Nothing can be superior to God, right? So if you think about it though, if you think about God in terms of that, the way I interpret that is that knowledge is God, right? There isn't a logical contradiction, because if you take all of the facts in existence and you put them together, that is just really the state of affairs, right? That another word for all of the facts in existence would just be the state of affairs, right? They're basically synonyms. So to me, that's God, is knowledge or truth. And I think another way of looking at that is by saying that all of the facts taken together in existence is just the economy. It's just the market, right? Isn't that what the economy is? It's just the state of affairs. So if you think about it, there's this, and again, I don't want to get too heavy for you. I probably already lost everybody, but what I'm trying to say here is that God, the knowledge, and the economy or the market are all the same thing. They're just different words for the same thing.
It's almost like markets are like the discovery of those facts. like price discovery and stuff, when people are free to, trade. And I don't know, man, this stuff's heady, but I fucking love it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I said, though, it's almost, of course we can go like deep into like the Euthyphro dilemma and how, like, if you reverse it, you get the same argument basically. But like, really, if you think about it, though, in my opinion, like, again, just to like break it down, like, simply, all of the knowledge, every fact taken to, if you collect every fact in existence and you put it together and you just refer to that as the truth, then that, to me, that's God, right? It's not some guy up in the like heaven with, like, in the clouds with like a toga and a beard. That's not God. That's a myth, right? God is the state of affairs. And really, the market economy is another word or a synonym for the state of affairs. So I do think that there's like this sort of religious or spiritual element to agorism as well.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't mean to take us too far off track, but you started talking about the scientific aspect, and that just really started clicking in for me with all that. So
I wanted to touch on some of these, like the security contracts. A lot of people, when you try to explain that Boogaloos aren't really, it's not an agorist philosophy, they always bring up security contracts. And I always say that they were there to basically protect their customers from the state, and they're not there to like make military strikes on the state. What would your opinion on that be?
What do you mean? What do you mean by like in other words, what objection are they making?
They just bring up the private security that the Agorists have, and they basically use that to justify or explain why boogs are.
Oh, right. Yeah, but the difference is a private defense agency has somebody has a customer who has voluntarily contracted with them. No one asked these Boogaloo people to go to Washington and start, lighting up Capitol Hill. And I didn't ask them to do that. I didn't hire them for that. But if there was a private defense agency that I could hire to protect me from my local police department, I would damn sure pay for that.
Absolutely.
That's the most immediate threat to me. I think to all Americans is the local police department. So, again, I would pay someone for that. I haven't paid anybody to go to Capitol Hill. I haven't had the opportunity.
You make up such a good point. What phase of agorism do you believe that we're in? Not to get too off topic, but I'll kind of bring this back around. But what phase of agorism do you think we're in?
Yeah, so Sam thought that there was going to be 4 stages to the Agorist revolution. Phase 1 would be like full-on statism.
It starts with phase 0, right? Doesn't it?
I don't even remember, actually, but I know like the first stage was like full-on statism. The final stage was like, the Agora. And then there was a couple intermediary stages in there. But I think that we're in phase 3. I think that we've just entered into phase 3. And I know that sounds like super optimistic, especially considering the state of affairs. But one of the things that Sam says is that we'll know that we're in phase 3 of the revolution when we start to see private firms taking on the functions normally reserved for the state. And I've got an article I wrote a while back for the New Libertarian about, I did a whole series of articles on technological agorism. And I think the second one in there was sort of, it covered this topic, but a lot of major companies, especially a lot of major tech firms, are starting to provide the services normally reserved for the state. A quick example, Microsoft is they're expanding broadband access into rural areas of the country based on the idea that they could sell third-party applications to people who now have, easy internet access. So, you compare that with like FDR's push for the electrification and expanding the electrical grid, where today we're still paying for like a lot of those programs are still in existence, right? And everybody has electricity, right? So it just goes to show you how, I think it was Milton Friedman that said the only thing, nothing's more permanent than a temporary government program. But whereas like the market-based system is much more efficient. So one example of like, the private one example of a private firm assuming the roles normally reserved for the state would be Microsoft doing that. But there's other ones as well, like SpaceX and Jeff Bezos's company. What is it, Blue Horizon? Who are like, they've taken it upon themselves now to like develop the infrastructure for outer space, and like the list goes on and on and on. Now, whether or not you agree with them or not, I don't happen to agree with them, but you see tech firms, quote unquote, ensuring the integrity of our elections. But that was another role responsibility reserved for the state. So I'm excited by all this, even the bad stuff like the social media censorship. I'm excited by all of it because at least it's subject to competition. Because if the state is providing those services or those goods, whatever the good or service in question is, if it's provided by the state, it'll be provided in a costly and inefficient manner. Whereas if there is a competitive element in the market, even if it's provided in a poor fashion, eventually the market will correct that.
Right. Yeah. And it seems like the market always beats out the state.
What phase do you think that we're in right now?
I was thinking we were in phase 2, but I think you kind of convinced me on phase 3 because there's even a private security company in Detroit that's taking on the role of the police, and they haven't killed anybody yet, which is amazing. Protect their customers.
Look at the way Uber has replaced or disintermediated the taxi cartels, or how Airbnb has disintermediated the hotel cartels. So whereas you needed before, the again, quote unquote, the quality of a hotel room was regulated by the state, and that's why there was bed bugs all over the world and roaches, and every hotel room was disgusting. Whereas now with Airbnb, you could stay somewhere for $50 a night and it'd probably be a pretty clean place. So I'm excited to see private firms replacing the state wherever we can. The most important, though, this is the holy grail of all of this, is what you mentioned, and that's the Agorist counter-economists providing alternatives to state police services. Because once we get down that road, then we can start eventually. We've just cracked the surface now, but eventually, there's going to be demand for protection from the state, from police services. And that's really going to be the tipping point in the whole Agorist revolution. And that'll be, of course, in phase 4, later in the revolution.
Do you think those private security firms would tend to pop up more? I'd have to imagine that something like that would happen once, let's say, things start to fall apart for the state a little bit, like in stage 3, they talk about the state starts to fall into crises and stuff, where they can't quite serve everybody, and they don't quite have the resources to, let's say, stop somebody from starting a competing firm or something. Do you think that something like that would be more likely to happen? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say.
Goodness. I was just going to say, do you think that something like that would be more likely to happen in a rural area, or do you see something like that happening in more like an urban area? And if so, do you think maybe more an affluent or more of a poor area?
Right. Well, it's already sort of happened in a lot of ways. In a lot of places in the economy, you already see it happening. The reason why there's armed trucks delivering, what's the word I'm looking for? Armored trucks delivering and picking up cash from banks is because the state is too inefficient, right? It's because the state is not capable of doing that. It's the same reason why in the 1800s, back in the day, you had the Pinkertons who would protect the train coaches, because the police were incapable of doing that work. And the list goes on. Bounty hunters exist because the state is incapable of doing their job. So wherever, whether or not, it's poor or affluent is sort of irrelevant. Wherever there's a demand, there's going to be somebody popping up to satisfy that demand. In the case of bounty hunters, it happens in less affluent, parts of society. But, I'm sure that's different in other areas.
I love the armored car example, and that's something that I bring up a lot to people, because and I've actually like looked into this too to make sure I'm not just full of shit, but like there's not a lot of instances of them like having to shoot somebody. There are some like robberies, but there's not a lot of instances of that. And I mean, like I go to Publix or something and there's this dude getting the safe and getting the money out of the safe in the front, and there's hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash in there, I'm sure. And he's walking it to the van, and if it was a cop, every little thing would be scaring them so much they'd be shooting at.
Isn't
every
it funny
person walking past them, I feared for my life.
even in New York City, in New Jersey, where I'm from, they're well armed. It's one of the few exceptions for people who can actually carry weapons. In the northeastern slave states are the drivers for these armored trucks. And you're right, they never get hit, they never get robbed. And isn't it funny how like the politicians in the Northeast understand that, hey, look, we don't want the armored truck guys to get robbed, so we'll let them carry weapons. Nothing bad's going to happen. But the single mother who has to, walk home at 3:00 in the morning, who works in the Bronx or in Patterson or something like that, she can't carry a gun. She doesn't need a gun, right? That's not important enough. But as long as the banksters have their security, their protection, who cares about the single mom who has to work, an extra job just to pay for the plunder that they impose on her.
Yeah,
sorry,
sure.
it gets me angry. Sorry.
No, I hear you, man. I hear you.
I wanted to ask you, what does phase 3, like the end of phase 3 and the beginning of phase 4, what does that look like? Because it's really hard for me to imagine it. And of course we're talking about something that hasn't happened, but how does that, because at phase 3, you've got like, massive agorism and counter economics really doing damage to the state's coffers. And then at phase 4, you've got, agorism winning, but, seeing the collapse of the state and then basically rounding up all the politicians and whoever else and making them work to pay off restitution to their victims. I'm sure that people like Bill Clinton would never get out for 1,000 years, but how does that? What does that look like to you, if you could?
Well, I don't have a copy of New Libertarian Manifesto in front of me, and Konkin might go into a little bit more precise detail than this, but to me, essentially, it's just in the way I envision it in my head is once we get into like deeper into the third phase of the revolution, we're going to start to see more and more pockets of counter economists, of agorists. Like right now, we have like the monolith, which is the state, with a handful of pockets of agorism scattered throughout the world, and small pockets at that. I think as we get deeper into phase 3, the number of pockets of agorism around the country and around the world in general will grow, not only in number, but also in size. And now by phase 4, I start to see that balance shifting. So there's going to be more, eventually there will be pockets of politicians who exist in a sea of agorists. And that's really to me, that's the defining characteristic of stage 4. And then, of course, finally, there's going to be, the one final lashing out by the politicians where they're going to, make their one last, attempt to violently subdue the agorists, but that will, in the end, fail, obviously. So, to me, phase 3 is just we're working towards a point of dominance. By phase 4, we've achieved that dominance, and by the end of stage 4 is when we sort of nail the coffin shut, so to speak.
Yeah, that was a great answer. I really appreciate all your insight on this too. Do you have any questions, Dag?
Not really any that work for shoehorning in right here, man.
We can just shift out of boogs and phases if you want. It doesn't matter.
Well, okay, so I guess related to that, I got a couple thoughts. So so let's say there's some sort of, boog or civil war, or something like that. I guess one of my questions is where, like, do we put it as like a geographical sense? Like, where is the line to where it stops being going out of your way to participate in a war versus self-defense? Like, is this when, something's happening a mile from your house, a block from your house? If you see it's going to end up at your house in a few days, like, is it, is it considered, wrong to, hop in a car and drive a few days and go participate in something? Or are we just going to sell guns to the people participating and we don't really care either way?
I mean, in my opinion, we should sell guns to everybody. The more people that are armed, the better. And that's both sides. It makes no difference to me, who fights in one of their civil wars. I don't really care. It's just too just, as far as I'm concerned, it's just inter-gang warfare, right? And I'm on the outside of the gang watching. And Sun Tzu has this great quote where he says, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the words in front of me, but he says something to the effect of, when your enemies are fighting, let them, and don't strengthen or weaken either one of them. So, as far as I'm concerned, when Antifa and Blue Lives Matter are fighting, let them. When the Republicans and Democrats are fighting, let them have at it. And, it just strengthens our hand. Now, like, insofar as like where is the line between self-defense and aggression, that's a highly subjective and contextual sort of thing. You really need to sort of be there to make that call. In my opinion, though, it has to be, self-defense can only be in defense of property. Whether that's your body or your belongings, you have the right to defend that, within reason. So, like I said, though, for every situation, it's different. It's highly contextual.
Yeah, for sure, because especially like when you get in things like the words like civil war, like that's a pretty specific definition, isn't that like two sides battling over control of one particular government?
Well, you would think, you would think, but that's not what we call, that's not what happened for what we term as the Civil War. You're right. I agree with you.
Yeah, the term I always liked for the American Civil War was the War of Southern Independence. I felt like that was like the best. And I'm not saying that the Confederacy, like I'm like, I'm like for the Confederacy or anything. You know what I mean? Like they did terrible things. But
of course.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my preferred term for that conflict.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Anything but the Civil War, I try to refer the war between the states. The War of Northern Aggression is a good one. Sometimes I just refer to it as Lincoln's genocide, but
yeah. And then, okay, so we might have already answered this by saying just let the two, fight each other out and say, is it wrong to cheer it on when it does happen, even if we don't participate?
That's a question outside the realm of agorism. Whether or not that's moral or immoral is, up to you to decide. I don't know. But to be honest with you, I don't really care. I just don't care anymore if they, like I said, as long as they don't hurt me or mine or my they don't aggress upon my property, I'm happy. It's too bad we can't go back to the old days where they just, two groups of people meet in the middle of a field and they duke it out. We can just throw all the Republicans and Democrats into like one empty location and come back in the morning and see who's standing. But it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Because ultimately it's the innocent lives and collateral damage is the problem. Like I don't have an issue with dueling. If two dudes want to go duel, hey man, go for it. So why not two groups? I've
often thought that, it's too bad we can't hire these politicians to like fight to the death in some like Coliseum, because there would be, it would be better selling than like Super Bowl tickets in America. That's how many people despise these politicians. Don't be, that's why I don't like voting, because it really does like lend an air of legitimacy to the system. But, the majority of people can't stand these crooks, and that the majority of Americans are sick and tired of this bullshit. It's just, the few remaining statists and voters out there. It's like, I don't even know the exact numbers. I haven't looked at this election, but the majority of people don't even participate in elections anymore in this country. So at what point do they have to admit that they've lost legitimacy?
Yeah, if only 6 people showed up to vote, like how could they claim that?
Right.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How could it be a representative government if nobody's participating?
Like Wendy McElroy said, like you're choosing not a representative of you, you're choosing a representative for the government. Like, they're just a liaison between you,
Yeah, right. Yes.
people and the government.
Yes, exactly. Well put. Yeah.
Let's shift to
Excuse me.
now. There are there's current events going on, and I know, I don't believe in voting or legitimizing the state or using the will of the majority to force the minority. But since there are current events going on with the election, and they say that there's voter fraud or whatever. There's fraud every year. Just elections are fraud in general.
Right, exactly.
Where do you see this whole thing going? I mean, I kind of see like the Republicans being pissed off, and they, maybe small groups going after each other. Where do you see it?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you have little pockets of skirmishes or something like that happening, but I don't.
Do you see Trump like conceding? Conceding willingly, or
no, not yet. At least I think a lot of it's going to determine what happens in Nevada, and then after that, I think you're going to see this legal process play out. You might even see like another Supreme Court case like that you did in Bush v. Igor or something like that. But I'd be surprised if they let Trump climb out on top of this one. I think mainstream media has been, again, and trust me, I'm like the last person in the world who supports Trump. I think he's a psychopath who, should be in camp for the murder of 19 civilians, and amongst other things. But, I think mainstream media believes that they have him where they want him. So I don't think that they're not going to let him stand up off the mat. They're going to try to keep him down for the 10 count. And, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Like I said, a lot of it hinges on Nevada. I think as of right now, it's Friday evening. I think Nevada, last I checked, it was like 48% and change, like to like 50% favoring Biden, but they'd only counted, I think, like 86% of the vote. So who knows what's going to happen? It looks like a lot of this is going to hinge on where Reno votes. We were saying before we went on, the 2 major population centers in Nevada are just Las Vegas and Reno. Las Vegas, is going to vote blue, which will be canceled out by the rural vote in Nevada. So which only leaves Reno. So basically the entire country is going to be, who the zookeeper is going to be decided by the people of Reno. That's how fucked up the system is.
Yeah, if you're dependent on a whole entire city to make a decision, it's
in the end of all cities, Reno. Have you ever seen the cops out there?
Yeah, super corrupt. Yeah.
I have a feeling cops aren't really like that, though.
Yeah, well, I hope they're not that stupid. Actually, it'd probably be better off
if they were. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because it's one of the reasons that I still it's hard for me to like cop shows, but I still enjoy that one.
Because they make fun of them.
Right. That's pretty much is it.
Right. It's also like in Shakespeare. They do the same thing in Shakespeare. There's like the 2 dumb cops. That's sort of like the literary device that's used over the years, and everybody knows that cops are stupid. The only people who don't know the cops are stupid are the people who marry them.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Yeah, when you look at the maps of like who voted for who, and there really is like the one of the things that's just so blatantly wrong with quote unquote system we have is like you look at a couple little spots of blue, the vast majority of the country's red, but it's these people in these dense cities that get to make decisions for everybody else, and that's.
Yeah, and look how they've been managing their cities, right? The cities are all disasters. They're falling apart. New York City is dead. Trust me, I just left like, a frigging Cuban refugee coming into Florida. That's basically how I arrived here. Everything is shut down. Everything is ruined. It's still ruined. I grew up there. New York, to me, was always the greatest city on earth. And every night we were out at like a new at a bar or a restaurant. We were always at some event or some meetup for Bitcoin or 3D printing, or some convention was going on, and then coronavirus hit and they just wouldn't let people do anything. You couldn't go to a bar or a restaurant. You couldn't do any of those things anymore. So really there was no point in paying for that high standard of living. And, that's a pattern that we've seen throughout the entire world. Any city where you get these left-wing socialists running it all turns to shit. San Francisco quite literally turned to shit. They're actually shitting in the street now in San Francisco.
Typhus outbreaks and stuff. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was in Miami for the Bitcoin conference just before coronavirus hit in like February, and there was just homeless people everywhere, all over the place. I couldn't believe it. And it's just every major city. Chicago has like there's a higher violent crime rate in Chicago than there is in Mosul, Iraq. Okay, but that just goes to show you how crazy these and backwards and counterproductive these socialist policies are, and now they want to replicate them on a national scale. So look, that's why I tell people, withdraw your consent from the system, reject the political establishment. Once you accept the philosophy of liberty, the only consistent out is to accept counter economics as the only proper solution. So protect yourself and engage in agorism. That's the only advice that's worthy of following at this point.
Yeah, crypto alternatives too. I mean, I love how crypto takes away not only the power from the state, but the central banks. Huge cartels that run everything. Yeah, crypto is just amazing. I could go on and on.
It's the most, in my opinion, and I gave a speech at Fork Day this year for the Bitcoin Cash anniversary, and basically the whole gist of the speech was that cryptocurrency is the most powerful tool in the counter economist's toolbox, right? The hammer is to the carpenter as crypto is to the agorist, because like you said, not only does it disintermediate the central bank, but now you have this peer-to-peer cash that's uncensorable, that you can use in a way where anybody can make any transaction. So not only are you getting around the Federal Reserve's inflation, but you're also getting around the DEA prohibitions or the ATF's prohibitions. And to me, that's just an absolutely beautiful thing, how all of that can come out of one innovation like the Bitcoin white paper.
One of the things that Wendy McElroy points out in the Satoshi Revolution too about it is it's one of the big values is also that you're also working around the banking cartel in the sense that transaction fees like Bitcoin Cash are like so minuscule. You can't send money across the world for that price any other way.
It's crazy. And it's funny. I just posted a picture on Snapchat. I was trying to fulfill in order for 3D printer to go burr. I was trying to buy like a bunch of 3D printers, and I had to move, I think it was like $3,600 around, and I was going to do it in BTC just because I have all this BTC sitting around that I wasn't using. So I was like, I might as well use that. And the fees, when I went to move it, the fees to move that amount of Bitcoin was like $86. And I'm thinking to myself, that's crazy. That's insane. How is that going to work as a money? So I moved over to Bitcoin Cash, and it cost me like less than a penny to move that amount of money around. So, it doesn't make sense to me how you can have an efficient, competitive medium of exchange when it costs so much money to complete a transaction. Could you imagine you're waiting online in like a retail setting, like I know nowadays most shopping is done online, but imagine like you're at like, I don't know, Target or something, waiting online, and you go to pay and you scan your BTC wallet, and you turn around to the customers behind you and you're like, all right guys, just give me like an hour and 10 minutes for this transaction to confirm. And by the way, cashier lady, you owe me like $50 to complete that transaction. That's a joke, right? That's not how money works. So a lot of the hype on BTC and the price is sort of built on speculation and branding. Whereas with Bitcoin Cash and some other currencies like Monero, it's really more based on fundamentals, which to me is where we should be focused as agorists.
Yeah, absolutely. a lot of people don't realize with BTC they do double spend now. So it's like, well, what's the point really? I mean, the whole point was to be able to verify without a trusted third party, peer to peer. I guess with fees that high, right? Like you might as well just use the banks at that point. So
right, yeah, exactly.
And then it takes away the I guess a lot of people don't realize this. You can double spend on Bitcoin on BTC now. So it's like the whole point of how can you double spend?
Yeah. not that I'm going to do it, but I'm just curious to find out how.
I don't know exactly how, because I don't even mess with Bitcoin anymore. But I guess you can spend it, and let me look this up.
Well, so you know what's interesting is because of the high fees, and people don't realize this, is that a lot, because the fees are so high, transactions get driven off of chain, right? Which removes the whole peer-to-peer aspect from cryptocurrency, which is the reason why it was created in the first place. So like, that's why we see like PayPal stepping into the whole cryptocurrency community, because, you know, now with PayPal, people think they're going to be able to move crypto around nice and easy with you know, no cost. But that's you might as well use dollars at that point. Well, you know, like you said, you might as well use a bank. What the hell is the point of even using Bitcoin at that point? The whole purpose is to have a peer-to-peer currency that doesn't require a KYC payment provider like PayPal. You know, that's really that's why what Ross did is so important from like a historical perspective, right? Because he showed us the power of having a peer-to-peer currency. You could never buy. Imagine you tried to buy dope with a credit card. You'd have the DEA breaking down your door by tomorrow morning, right? But with cryptocurrency, where you don't need that third-party verifier, it's just the buyer and the seller are the only parties in that transaction. You can exchange for whatever you'd like at that point, and you know that peer-to-peer nature is what. That is the utility of Bitcoin. Like a lot of times you hear people say there's no intrinsic value to cryptocurrency, right? It just exists virtually. Well, the intrinsic value, the utility that Carl Menger described, the use value requirement, is satisfied by being that peer-to-peer cash. And like, you know, and you guys might have heard me say this. A lot of the listeners probably have heard me say this, but like if you think about gold, like gold was able to become money because it was valued by everyone. Everyone wanted it, not for its monetary purpose, but because it was used for decorative purposes. But because every single person wanted it for decorative purposes, it became used as money, right? Because everybody wanted gold, it became very easy for me to say, hey, you know what? Can I give you some gold for those chickens? And you say, yeah, okay, sure, I want gold. Yeah, of course. So that utility is what sort of bootstrapped the demand, the monetary demand, I should say. So in the case of cryptocurrency, the way I see it, and I think this is where Ross comes in, is, you know, that having a peer-to-peer currency right now, it only appeals to agorists and counter-economists. But as the state becomes more oppressive, as they become more restrictive, as they attempt to censor more and more transactions, the demand for a peer-to-peer currency is going to skyrocket. And that is going to be like how gold was decorative. That's going to be what does it for us. That's what's going to be bootstraps the demand for cryptocurrency around the world. And that's, you know, again, that's what Ross proved with the Silk Road. And of course, he was following the model laid out by J. Neil Schulman in Alongside Night. And, you know, before Neil died, I had him on the show, and I asked him, I said, you know, what are some good ways people can get involved in counter economics? And he told me carefully. He said carefully, because he was very cognizant of the fact that Ross got double life plus 40 by following the plan that he laid out in his book. And I think that sort of, I think that weighed heavily on Neil towards the end.
Wow.
Yeah, I had heard that about Ross, that he started reading showman there, and then started really conking and stuff, and then got into doing the Silk Road thing, and it's like that's great, but like it's troubling too, I guess.
Now, as far as the double spend, I've got it right here. Hayden Otto did the test, and it says here, for the test, Otto simply downloaded an Electrum wallet for Android, and he set up 2 wallets in the application. He sent a transaction with the RBF-enabled wallet, and then sent another transaction with the wallet with RBF disabled.
Right.
After purchasing goods from the merchant, Otto walked away with the merchandise and performed double spend with the other wallet he created.
Right. Yeah, that reversed by fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hayden does great work. The whole Bitcoin Cash split, it's really driven a wedge into the community, and I think it's too bad. Hayden and I find ourselves on opposite ends of that split, because I think he really does some amazing work with adoption. He's probably one of, if not the most effective people in the world when it comes to cryptocurrency adoption. So I hope he comes back.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Roger Ver is like number one, and like Hayden's up there too. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Now, in terms of we've got an update on, what is it, the 15th, right? In terms of Bitcoin Cash.
Oh, yeah. November 15th, we're going to get a free airdrop from ABC. Shout out to Amori for that. I appreciate the free coins. I'll be converting it back to real Bitcoin Cash as soon as I get them. So
same here. I'm on the Ver Saul Mayweather.
Yeah, it's
myself. Go ahead and explain to us like why you're forking this way.
Right. Well, see, to me, the whole point is it doesn't make sense to me to put the Bitcoin project into anyone's hands. Even Satoshi didn't want to be in charge of his own project, so why should Amari be in charge of it? The way I look at it is this. If you think about what Bitcoin Cash with an IFP is going to look like, especially when that IFP is ran by ABC, by one development firm, it's just Dash. It's just a much more centralized version of Dash. And by the way, huge fan of Dash. I love Dash. I think it's absolutely great currency. They make an attempt to be a medium of exchange, which I think is the key to cryptocurrency. But they have a treasury funding mechanism, and it works out great. They funded some amazing projects like that. But it's been done in a decentralized fashion. That's the difference, right? There's no overlord. It's based on, I'm sure you know this, but it's based on a system of master nodes and master node voting. And you have to put up Dash to stake in order to run a master node. I think it's like 1,000 Dash. I could be wrong, but that's like a lot of money, So it's a significant investment. People who want to run a master node have an incentive to see the Dash network develop the best way possible. With Bitcoin ABC, there's no such incentive. They just have an incentive to follow their own interests. That's why I think you have this sort of confluence of developers congregating around ABC. That's the only people supporting the fork are the developers, because they're the ones who stand to gain the most monetarily. So, not only that, but if you think about it, why should we subsidize only one development firm? Why not Bitcoin Unlimited? Why not Bitcoin.com? Why does it have to be Bitcoin ABC? Why should they be the ones being subsidized from the Coinbase reward? Why shouldn't it be Agorist Nexus or the Igor podcast?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, right. I mean, we both promote Bitcoin Cash. I mean, why should Amori? Again, Amori is a brilliant developer. I'm not taking any of that away from him. He's been fundamental in the whole fight for Bitcoin Cash. There's no doubt about that. No, I'm not debating that at all. I just don't. I don't. It seems silly to me at this point, 12 years into the Bitcoin project, to put it all into one person's hands. So, and I think the miners agree with me. Even Binance, I think, came out and said that they were going to give the ticker to the chain with the most hash power, which as of now seems quite clearly to be BCHN. So we'll see what happens. But I'm confident that at the end of the day, ABC is going to end up forking themselves off into obscure.
Yeah, I totally agree with and I'm going that way with the fork too. I mean, I don't like how you can just take away how are you going to take away the rewards from the miners? I mean, and give it to people with no interest. I mean, I think you make a great point there. So go ahead, Dag. Sorry.
No. So stupid newbie question, because I still just, this whole fork thing still just, I'm still just so confused by it. So they fork off, and then like you were saying, Sal, like you can get airdrop this, Bitcoin Cash ABC or whatever. Does that, so like, let's say I own like one, BCH. Does that mean that like I get like the BCH ABC thing, and then like where does that show up? What do I do with it? Like I don't know. It's so
yeah, that's exactly what it means.
It's a little confusing to me.
That's exactly what it means. So that's how a hard fork works. You get whatever you hold in the original coin, you get that in the new coin. How you receive it depends. Like, this is why I tell people don't keep your coins on an exchange, because if you have your coins on an exchange, this happened with a couple forks in the past. The exchange just says, "Oh no, those are our coins. The new coins, those belong to us." Look, not your keys, not your coins. So don't keep any significant amount of cryptocurrency on an exchange. I think with a private wallet, I'm not really sure how exactly it'll work, but I'd imagine, as long as they support both chains, you should just, it'll just appear in your wallet. I'm not really sure how it's going to work, though, for something like the Bitcoin.com wallet, which is the one I use. I'm not sure if they're going to offer support for it immediately or not. I should probably reach out to Roger or Colin or somebody and see what the deal is with that.
Yeah, please do.
It'd be nice to know, what to expect. I mean, if I get something that I can sell, then hey, that's great. I probably do the same thing you were saying, just sell it off if I can and get more BCH.
Yeah, you can whenever these forks happen, you can expect to see like a lot of volatility. But the key is don't get scared and sell off, because you'll regret it at the end of the day. The best thing to do is to sort of try your best not to like pay attention to it. Don't get worried about it. Don't say, "Oh, the price is up, 50% or it's down 50%," because, like I said, the price can be very volatile during these forks. So try not to get too worked up by the price and stick to the fundamentals at the end of the day. And when you get through the tunnel, you'll see that you'll see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Fortunately, I don't hold enough for it to really matter much. So I just let it do its thing. But I'm trying to be as educated as possible, and it's my money.
Right.
Try to be serious about it. But it's I heard someone say this recently, and it was like, this is a new technology. There's volatility. There's there's a learning curve. But if you get on it now, by the time it gets to be more normalized, where the term even grandma can use it, you'll be way ahead. So it's it's good to just go ahead and get it now. So I'm trying not to freak out about anything when prices fluctuate. Like whatever. I don't hold enough for it to really matter much. So I'm just gonna roll with the punches.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I'm 100% in. I don't have any fiat. I try to keep as whenever I get fiat, I try to convert it as quickly as possible into sound money. Absolutely. And I found that's that's changed my life. People don't understand what a dramatic impact that it has on your life when you stop using fiat currency and you start using sound money, because it changes your life in so many different ways. When you hold sound money, your time preference goes down and your values in life change. I mean, it just changes everything about you, really. It changes your spending habits and your priorities. You become more focused on acquiring more and more money, because you know that value is going to go up rather than go down, and you don't really want to spend it as quickly. Like I said, I'm all in. I'm basically, like I said, I'm basically 100% in on cryptocurrency at this point, and the price fluctuations, I don't let it get to me anymore. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, wow, I made like $1,000 when I was asleep last night. And sometimes I wake up, I'm like, hey, I lost $1,000 when I was asleep at night. And you just can't let that shit get to you. You just gotta.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I what's important to me is that I don't pay for the famine in Yemen. I don't want to pay to murder children that I've never met on the other side of the world. And you know, do you remember that picture of the kid in Syria on like the train that got bombed and he's just sitting there? I'm not paying for that shit. I'm not doing it. You can put me in jail, you can shoot and kill me, but I'm not going to fund that. I won't do it. So cryptocurrency allows me to not have to fund that. And to me, I couldn't have asked for a greater gift than cryptocurrency. Satoshi Nakamoto, I mean, I wouldn't know. I don't know what I would do if I was put in a situation where I have to fund that shit. I don't know. Maybe I would just be homeless or something. I would just go live in the woods. I don't know. But I'd have to withdraw from society. So thank God for Satoshi, and thank God for the white paper.
Yeah, that's where I always go to too when someone tries to guilt you for not paying taxes. It's like I don't want to fund bombing brown kids. You know,
I don't want to do it.
As far as living on cryptocurrency, you know, for like regular bills and stuff, do you recommend getting like one of the, one of like the debit card things from like, I think crypto.com has one, or BitPay or something like that? Is that how you handle like your regular bills?
Yeah. So those cards are heavily KYC'd, and like there's all sorts of, you know, they try to entice you to sign up for them. Like I think the crypto.com card will give you like a free subscription to Spotify or something, but it's at the end of the day, they're all heavily KYC'd, and that's not the point of having crypto. But with that being said, I do use them because it you know, for all intents and purposes, it does normalize the spending experience. But, you know, actually, it's funny you bring up bill pay, because this is something I've been working on at Agoristics for a while, is creating a payment solution for cryptocurrency. There used to be a company called Lamium. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Lamium. They're not around anymore, but basically it worked like this. And I think it was designed to work with Dash. And what happened was you could post your utility bills, or your cell phone bill, your car insurance bill, or whatever it is. You could post your utility bills, and then somebody could come along. Like, let's say you had a cell phone bill for $100. You would post that bill along with $100 in cryptocurrency. And then somebody could come along and pay that bill with fiat and collect the crypto. So in other words, it was a way for people to pay their bills using cryptocurrency, and it was also a way for people to acquire cryptocurrency in a non-KYC fashion, which, obviously on both ends of that, you're practicing counter economics. It's a wonderful thing, and it's something that I've been kicking around at Agoristics, of trying to come up with some sort of solution like that for Bitcoin Cash, so that people can pay bills without having to, access one of these KYC debit solutions, and also so people can acquire cryptocurrency in a non-KYC fashion. One of the questions I get asked the most is how can I get crypto without going through one of these KYC exchanges? And I used to tell people, go to Lamium, but you can't do that anymore. So now I tell them to go through these peer-to-peer exchanges like local.bitcoin or local coin swap, local cryptos. And I've used all of these, by the way, successfully. But the problem is that they attract a lot of scam artists. And I've gotten burnt a couple times. There's a lot of identity thieves on these exchanges and stuff like that. So, it would be a more secure non-KYC solution to have like something like Lamium. So that's something that we're working on now, and hopefully we'll have more news about that within the next like 2 or 3 months.
I love that idea. That is excellent. And because I suffer the same thing. It's like, every like paycheck or something, I'm like, I just want to get like 50 or $100 worth of whatever, so it'd be nice to be able to go on there, find a bill that matches,
right,
and to do it. Cause I like the .local exchanges as a, as well. But I find some of them, it's like the people, like, especially like the Bitcoin ones, like the people want like more KYC than, like, I saw one with like, okay, you got to write out this paper that says you are who you say you are, take a photo of your face with your ID with holding the paper. And I'm not doing that. That's even worse than like an exchange.
Right. Well, what happens in their defense is that you'll get like these scam artists who will run like phishing scams, and what they'll do is they'll gain access to your like online bank account, and then they can't start spending your money because the bank is going to shut them down. It's a third-party verification service. So the workaround is to go onto one of these peer-to-peer crypto exchanges and buy a bunch of Bitcoin and have it sent to their personal wallet, and then this way they can sort of clean their stolen loot. So that's why there's like people are so rigid with those requirements, because they get burnt so often. It happened to me. I lost like I think I was doing it for a long time, and I was making good money, and then this was when it was brand new, and I guess when the scammers started to get into it, I took a hit for like $600 or something. And I was like, yeah, you know what? That's it. I'm not going to do it anymore. So it's too bad though, because it was profitable and it was a good way to engage in the counter economy, but it was just too risky to keep going on like that, you know?
Yeah, you got to watch your ass.
Yeah.
A friend asked me, like, when am I going to sell my crypto? You know, at what point? And I told him never, you know, like, and I'm not doing it for the profit. I'm doing it to take down the banks, to take down the government, to not support them. You know, the US dollar is just blood money. Like, every time you use it, you're giving into the demand. You know, there's a supply and demand for everything, even US dollars. So you're creating more of a demand for dollars when you use it versus like crypto or something, right? So
yeah,
like
you're enabling lowlives like Jamie Dimon and Lloyd Blankfein and all these like trashy scumbags who perpetuate the political system, right? It's the Goldman Sachs of the world who survive off of the Federal Reserve, and it's also the Goldman Sachs of the world who perpetuate the Chuck Schumers and the Mitch McConnells and the Nancy Pelosi's. So it's, you know, why should you and I pay for Lloyd Blankfein's new yacht, right? Why should we buy Jamie Dimon a new Maserati? Screw those people. Those are the ones who are oppressing us. So, but, you know, going back to what you originally said, you're exactly right. If anybody out there is like wondering when the right time to sell cryptocurrency is, that just means that they don't understand it yet, right? You don't, you know, there's that famous meme with the guy from the Matrix, and he's like, when should I sell my crypto? He's like, well, what if I told you that, you know, when you're ready, you don't have to? And like, that's the whole thing. It's like, and that's sort of the vision of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency that we all got excited about like years ago, that the maximalists and this new wave of like financial investors and these finance guys, they sort of tampered those hopes and those dreams down. But that was always the point. Was to, like, you know, fight the banks and to create a new currency, not to create a currency that works alongside the existing fiat system. Or like, now you hear the maximalists talking about using Bitcoin as a reserve currency for the central banks. I'm like if you read the Bitcoin Standard by Saifuddin Amos, he says that Bitcoin should be used as a reserve currency for the central bank. And I'm like, damn, if there's this guy clearly doesn't understand cryptocurrency, but he's making, you know, all kinds of money selling this book and selling courses, when he obviously has no inkling of why Bitcoin was created in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, man, it's a crazy world out there, but I like...
Should have brought a beer.
Right?
You know, the other crypto that I think people don't really pay attention enough to, and like I said, I'm all in on Bitcoin Cash. I think that Bitcoin Cash is the most potent of the cryptocurrencies from a counter economic perspective, but very close behind is Monero. I'm a very big fan of Monero, and I've grown on Monero a lot recently. It's great because they use different cryptographic protocols to conceal the sender, the recipient, and the wallet address. But on top of that, unlike some of these other privacy coins out there, like Zcash or something, which is not, you know, it's no longer private because it's been hacked. Monero has never been hacked, and I think it was IRS offered like a reward for anybody who can crack the cryptography behind Monero, and no one's been able to do it. So I'm a big fan of Monero.
Funny about that is because I saw that and they were like, yeah, it's like $100,000 or whatever they're offering. And it's like anybody who could crack Monero could make way more than $100,000, in other ways.
You need more than $100,000 to crack Monero, right? You need more than that just in hash power alone, just to even think about cracking Monero.
Right.
Forget about like paying like talented like developers or something. I mean, it's just the bottom line is it's just never going to happen, right? Like think about you'd have to crack ring confidential transactions. You'd have to crack stealth addresses. Like it's just not going to happen. Like any one of the three major cryptographic tools that are used in the Monero chain are strong enough on their own, but all three put together are, more or less impenetrable.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Monero myself.
Privacy coins are the ways to go.
I just
Go ahead, Brandon.
The only thing about Monero is that I'm not sure exactly how they're going to. I guess the only roadmap that I see is that they're going to increase. Eventually, they're going to increase the ring signature to make it, even more private.
Right.
So I guess I have a problem. I have an issue with the only issue I have with Monero is what are they going to do to make it even more private? Because I feel like just having 10 or actually it's 11 ring signatures, they'll be able to eventually follow a lot of those transactions. It's kind of like a big shell game, right?
It is. It is. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then eventually, I guess they're only going to increase the ring size to like, they're going to double it or whatever. But I mean, I don't really see any other long-term, privacy enhancer besides just increasing the ring signature. I haven't seen anything yet. I don't know if you've seen anything.
No, and I agree with you on that. I think a slightly even bigger hurdle for Monero is in adoption. Right, the problem with Monero is that it's not accepted anywhere, and that's because of the whole the regulatory aspects of all of it. With Bitcoin Cash, it's accepted in more places than any other cryptocurrency in the world. With Monero, it's not the case. Like, I process at 3D Print to Go Burr. We process, excuse me, we process Bitcoin or cryptocurrency transactions using Coinbase Commerce. But there's no option to accept Monero. I can accept Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash or Ethereum, but there's no. It doesn't accept. There's no option for me to accept Monero, and I think that's true of a lot of payment processors. And that all goes back to the whole regulatory aspect of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote an article on Agorist Nexus called the crypto properties of money and cryptocurrency, and like medium of exchange is, I think it was Rothbard who said medium of exchange is the most important.
Yes.
They're all important. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, if you have something that's working as a medium of exchange, it's got most of those properties already, right? So
and this is the debate that I have with the maximalists all the time, right? This is why they don't like me, is because that's the exact. I make the exact same point to them. They say the primary function of Bitcoin is to serve as a store of value, but that's not what money is. Money, there isn't a praxeological difference between the terms money and medium of exchange. It's the same thing. And what Mises writes in the Theory of Money and Credit in Chapter 1 is that all of the secondary functions of money, and he lists them off. I think there's like 3 or 4 of them. He says store of value, credit facilitation, payment medium, unit of account. All of these functions are secondary functions of money, which rely on money's ability to serve its primary purpose, which is as exchange media. And it makes sense, right? Like, if you know that everybody around you who you engage in commerce with is going to accept pencils in commerce, well, then you have more of an incentive to stockpile pencils, right? You have more of an incentive to use it as a way to store your value because you know in the future it can be used, for goods and services. So, the maximalist ideology is completely flawed. They've been sold a bill of goods on false economics by guys like Saifuddin Ammous and, myself and Roger Rivera and some others. We've been trying to get people to see the sunlight on this. And, some people we've been able to wake up and others not so much. But we've certainly been able to piss off a fair amount of maximalists, that's for sure. I even had Nick Szabo call me. He said I was a dogmatist for believing in regression theorem. So I said to him, I swear to God, he told me, he says I was a dogmatist because I was a Mengerian. So I said to him, okay, fair enough. Explain to me the origins of money in a non-circular fashion. And then he stopped responding because it's not possible to do that. And, people forget. The reason why Menger came up with regression theorem was to solve the problem of circularity. I might have to go get some water in a second, but if we point to if we say, why is money worth something today? We have to point to its value yesterday. Well, why did it have value yesterday? And you point to the day before, and you can sort of continue on in this infinite regress. Right, that's why it's called regression theorem. So Menger's thing was there has to be some sort of non-monetary value at the end of that line. And that was the whole thing, was he came up with the whole use value requirement. And that's, we went into how gold was used for decorative purposes and stuff like that. And that's the whole maximalist argument, is that, well, you don't need that peer-to-peer cash aspect because we satisfy the use value requirement by being a store of value. And it's well, now we're back to the whole medium of exchange thing. It's just the whole philosophy is circular, and that's the problem with it.
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing is that when I set up Agorist Nexus, I'm this Saul guy, he's hitting on everything that everything that I believe is he's just hitting every single nail in there, whether it's crypto. I went down I went to the Bitcoin Cash fork, whether it's Boogaloo's. Every time I hear you talk, I'm this guy is he just nails it. So it's somebody else have just a great perspective on it.
I think it's I think it's really not the way I see it is. Let the principles guide you, right? It's not really up to me to decide. That's why we have these principles to follow and to apply. So, the consistent application of principles should lead us all to the same place, So hopefully that's what's going on. And, guys like you, guys like you and, Roger Rivera and some others, we always seem to be on the same page, and I think that's probably because we're all applying the same principles,
Yeah, absolutely. Dag, did you have anything else?
Not
Did you grab water or anything? So go ahead.
No, not on that topic. I wanted to talk briefly about 3D printing before we wrapped up, though.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So Sal, I got to say that when I first heard, it might have been on Loose the Goose, when I first heard you talk about 3D printer go burr, and I was so mad at myself. I was like, damn it, D, that was so simple. It's the greatest title in the world, or the greatest name in the world for a company. Why did you not think of that? It's such a simple yet brilliant idea. So props to you, man. That's great. And that is just a no KYC 3D. For those of y'all listening who don't know, you're selling 3D printers, no KYC. Do you want to explain that a little bit? You do a better job than me.
Well, yeah, that was the whole point. Was that there was no. It really took me. It took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to figure this out. But all 3D printer purchases were being routed through KYC payment processors. And, if you step back from a counter-economic perspective, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So, I had one foot in the 3D printing space and one foot in the Bitcoin world. And, I knew that the purpose of the white paper was to create a peer-to-peer currency to remove those third-party verifiers. So I thought to myself, well, hey, if somebody was just offering 3D printers and filaments and supplies for cryptocurrency, well, there should be no way that the state can have any involvement in that transaction. So that's what I did. And I took a gamble on the fact that there were people out there who wanted to buy 3D printers for cryptocurrency. And so far, I'm right. I'd say probably a little bit more than half of our sales are done in cryptocurrency. I think today we did, I don't know, maybe about $1,000, a little bit more than $1,000 in sales. And that was, it's all conducted in cryptocurrency with 100%. So it's great. It's great. The money never turns into fiat. I buy the printers with crypto and, I'm paid in crypto. So it's wonderful. And that's the whole point of Agoristics, which is 3D Printer Go Burr is just a project of Agoristics, which is a company that created to help spread the mass adoption of cryptocurrency. And, the way I see it is there's a lot of people out there who have cryptocurrency. They want to use it, but it's not very easy to transact with because there aren't a lot of merchants that accept it. So our goal is to expand the amount of goods and services offered for cryptocurrency. And, 3D Printer Go Burr is one aspect of that.
Yeah, it's great, man. Like I said, excellent idea, and just a way to perpetuate or promote the use of crypto. Like I try to with my I run a small farm, as we do a farmers market and stuff. Like I have a sign that says, "Hey, we accept crypto." Blah blah blah.
Nice.
I mean, nobody's ever paid for it, but countless conversations about it. With people who either have maybe just briefly heard about cryptocurrency and now they know it is something they can actually use, and they're at least to buy from me. So anything to help sort of promote that or get it in people's heads, I'm down with. And I've even been offering a discount of like 15%.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anybody who wants to use it.
Yeah, no, that's the way to do it. That is, in New Hampshire, they do that a lot. I have a lot of friends at the Free State Project who will go to these farmers markets and they'll offer their produce for silver coins or cryptocurrency. And before you know it, all of the merchants in the farmers market were accepting silver coins and cryptocurrency, which is, it's great. It's what we're here for.
Yeah. Excellent. Is that, what was it called? It was like a belt or like a track 3D printer. I saw a picture of it online. Is that an actual thing? Is that happening?
Yes. The belt printers. So there's this.
How does the piece stay adhered yet not adhered? I don't understand.
So it's interesting. So the way a belt printer works is you can almost think of like a treadmill, and Creality. There's this Asian chick named Naomi Wu, who she's usually like half clothed and whatnot, but she also happens to be like this brilliant engineer. And she's working with Creality, the company that creates the Ender printers, which is the ones libertarians use and the ones that we sell at 3D Printer Go Burr. But she's working with Creality to create what will be the first ever sub $1,000 belt printer. So this is going to be a beast. The way it works, a normal printer will print horizontally, whereas this is going to have a diagonal gantry. So it'll, in other words, the extruder will move on a diagonal axis, which is unique to 3D printers. Most 3D printers don't work like this. And as it prints something, the belt is going to move down and it'll print off the next model, and the belt will move. And the belt is always in motion. And at the end of the belt, there's this little, like a metal edge, metal lip, so that the print, whatever object you've printed, will hit the metal lip and fall off the belt. It's absolutely brilliant. And what's exciting to me, and I think to other Agorists, is that we're moving from the household production of firearms to the mass production of firearms in the counter economy. And I think there's been some great work done in the 3D printing world by agorists like Ivan the Troll.
He's great, man.
He's one of the most effective counter economists that's active today. I'd say probably him and Roger Ver are the most effective counter economists today. But anyway, the work that he's done, and even the Chinese company at Creality, they don't even realize it. But they're under the ink of the CCP, but they have done more to fight and stop gun control than the NRA has. Which is, they don't even realize it too. By the way, they're just trying to make money, which is beautiful. That's agorism, right? So, yeah, I'm really excited about. There's some amazing developments in the 3D printing world going on right now, and we can spend the whole episode just on that.
Oh yeah. I recently got into it myself, and I'm turning into a bit of a 3D printing nerd.
Oh, nice. Did you get a machine or?
I got it was before I heard of your site, so bear with me. But no, I got an Ender 3. They were Control Pew had tweeted out that they were on sale. I got it for like $212, and I was like, dude, I can't believe that this machine is only $200. Like, that is just insane to me.
That's awesome.
And I've been getting into CAD. I've been learning how to CAD and stuff. I designed and printed a couple things today for little tools and stuff that I wanted for around the farm. Yeah, man. And I've really been trying to get into the CAD thing, though, being able to actually design stuff. And I'd like to be able to be a part of some of this creation that's going on. We had Control Pew on a couple months back, and I mean, just amazing. And it's just I just love that people come together from all over the world who have never met each other, to design these things, and they beta test them and safety test and this and that. Yeah. It's not dudes in white lab coats. It's just people, and I just love that shit.
Yeah, it's really incredible too. If you think about, like, I don't know, there's it's the whole 3D printing space is moving so quickly. It's advancing so fast. Of all the areas of counter economics and agorism, it's probably advancing the fastest. There's a lot of work being done in tokenization as well, but think about where we were with 3D printing guns just 5 or 6 years ago. We had the Liberator, and that was it. It was a one-shot pistol if you were lucky. If you were lucky, you wouldn't blow your hand off. But it was an absolutely magnificent invention, right? In all plastic.
Gotta start somewhere, man.
It was beautiful. I mean, you think you can get this gun onto an airplane? You can get it through a metal detector. So we went from that in 4 or 5 short years to FGC 9s and Glock frames and all sorts of neat whatever Ivan can come up with this week. So if the whole space is advancing very quickly, and I'm confident that within 10 years there's going to be 1 million Ivans, and at that point, it's already too late for them to put the cat back in the bag. But once we have 1 million Ivan the Trolls, then the ATF is going to be dead in the water for good and buried, as they rightfully deserve to be.
Yeah, make them obsolete. It's funny, like, Biden was saying, like, I'm going to make, like 3D printing guns or file sharing, or however he specifically said it, like, illegal. And it's like, make it illegal all you want, dude. You can't stop it. Like you said, the cat's out of the bag, dude.
See, I'm from New Jersey, and let me tell you something. It was like the most heavily regulated state in 3D printers in the country, right? You couldn't even, it was illegal for us to like possess the files. It was the only state in the country where you can't tell someone how to download a file, like a 3D printing gun file, is the state of New Jersey. It's illegal. So now think about that. They actually have speech that's illegal. If you stood in front of one of these communist prosecutors, let's say in Newark, New Jersey, and you literally verbally spoke the code to an FGC 9 frame or something like that, you would go to jail. you would go to jail for, and it's like a serious crime. It's like trafficking of firearms or something crazy like that. That's communism. But you know what? As somebody who's from there, I can tell you that it didn't work. It didn't work. Many people in New Jersey utilize the counter economy for guns, and I'll just leave it at that.
I mean, the most blatant example out there is the war on drugs. I mean, they've been illegal forever, but you can't keep them out of prisons. Like,
Yeah,
really
exactly.
What you guys doing here?
Yeah, in fact, I one of the things I tell people is it's easier to get a gun in Newark, New Jersey than it is to get in rural Texas. They're cheaper too. They're cheaper. They're a lot cheaper, frankly, because there's this whole underground market. I won't even call it a black market because sometimes it's not NAP consistent, but there's a whole underground market that is spurred on by the communist attempt to oppress gun rights.
Yeah, they just try and regulate something and just make it worse. Ain't that the way it goes?
And, that's one of the great things about 3D Printer Go Burr is that a lot of our sales are to gun-free zones. And of course, I don't obviously, I would never publicly tell someone to do something illegal, right? I'm not going to wind up like Irwin Schiff or someone, but it makes me happy when I see those 3D printers go out to a place like California or something like, or New York, because what they're being used for, or you hope that they're being used to liberate the individual and empower them.
Well, yeah, that's what's so great with the certain ones like the FGC9 versus, let's say, the Glock or something that you need to get like a piece that's good here. Is like, yeah, people all over the world can use that, in a place where, guns are totally illegal to make defense for themselves. We had somebody on an internet group I was in who was in Puerto Rico, and they're like, hey guys, I really want to get a gun. I can't really get a gun here. What do you guys recommend? And we sort of pointed them in the right direction, and within 2 hours they were on their way. Yeah. So it's, and then like I was getting goosebumps like when that happened. Like, that's just so amazing,
Well, that's what that was the whole point, right? Because like, and this is the way Ivan described it to me, is anybody in America, it's very simple. You can order, the parts for a Glock right now off of Amazon or something like that. It's very simple in America, but people in other countries, it's not as simple. So that's why he did all that work to he figured out how to rifle a barrel and stuff like that in your kitchen sink, which is fucking
incredible.
Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I mean, really, if you think about it, the guy deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for that, because he's probably done more to promote peace by that one innovation than any president has ever done.
Yeah. You got anything else, Brad? We've taken up a lot of Sal's time here, which is much appreciated, Sal. There anything else we want to go over today?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I really appreciate having you on. It's always a true honor. So
I appreciate you guys having me. Let's do it more often, man. I'm always game, especially on Agorist shows and shows that are hosted by other Agorists. Anything I could do to help and promote and support your efforts. So like I said, I'm honored to be on the show, and we should do it as often as you'll have me. Until you get sick.
I will take you up on that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's have them on like every week.
Yeah, whatever you guys want, let's do it. Really.
You were to replace me as co-host? I mean,
I guess that's our show. I got a quote. Unless you got something else to.
No, man, I'm good, buddy.
All right. The goal of agorism is the agora, the society of the open marketplace, as near to untainted by theft, assault, and fraud as can be humanly attained, is as close to a free society as can be achieved. And a free society is the only one in which each and every one of us can satisfy his or her subjective values without crushing others' values by violence and coercion. Samuel Edward Conklin III, Agorist Nexus out.